Hey there, we are about to read chapter 8 of Medicine Walk. If we remember in chapter 7, Burr Henderson is out of the chimney and he's having a really hard time. It's very hot. He's having to deal with no food and no water. And to help himself, he is remembering what his dad had been telling him and teaching him, same as Nachito and also Charlie and their Indian ways, and those things that he has learned from them mentally and physically are helping him on his journey. He also has this cougar that is he's afraid of him, but this cougar is kind of encouraging him in his path. So let's see what happens in chapter 8. Chapter 8 is entitled Moon Visions. I walked into the eye of the moon. At times it almost blinded me, though it was as red and it was only partly there. Still, it gave me light to find my way. The night was wonderfully cool. My skin was chilly, and I was glad of it. After the searing I had had for days, it would take a long time for cold to bother me. I came to the end of a tabletop mesa. It slanted away southeast, following the course of all the ranges in this part of the country. I could have stayed on its top and gone almost the way I wanted to, but it was so uneven and it was cut with gullies that I decided to go down. It was just as easy, and I could keep the moon at the same angle to my course, as long as it was still in the east. I found a track down the steep side of the mountain, though it was really more illusion than anything else. In the moonlight, it was shadowed, which made it seem deep and safe, and I set off along it with a confidence that something inside me knew was false. Another part of me didn't care, though. That was the part that had been listening, feeling the air and sensing the wind. Was that what Nachito had meant? I seemed to feel every stir of life among the rocks. Pocket gophers, lizards, scorpions, pack rats, all were going about their business for the night, and something inside me knew all about them. I could sense something huge and menacing just over the horizon. I understood that it was the world I'd known all my days, felt through the perceptions of other kinds of life. It was an eerie feeling, as if there were two of me. The moon tugged me onward. I set my gaze on it, though I knew very well that that was a foolish thing to do. I felt someone near me. The moon's face blurred, and Dad was looking at me. "Good boy, Burr," he said. "I knew you had it in you. Keep at it, if you die trying." Then he was gone. I found myself standing on the little path with my eyes full of tears. I blinked very hard. The glare of the moon had dazzled me, and I couldn't see ahead. I didn't dare move forward until I had my night vision back, for the trail I was following was too sketchy to chance going it blind. I stood still, letting the chilly breeze bring the high, clean scents of the mountains to my nose. I wondered for one instant how it would smell to a cougar. As I stood, eyes closed, that strange sense returned to me. I could feel small creatures scurrying about on the mountainside and among the rocks. A screech overhead told me some airborne predator was at work. An owl? There were trees, enough on some of the ridges I'd seen from the top of the mesa to support owls. Maybe. A muffled rattle in the pebbles of the path a bit ahead told me a snake was moving on its way. I opened my eyes. I could see again, and this time I kept my gaze on the path, knowing the moon's position from the shadows of the rocks. It was a long way down. Twice I almost took a header straight down as bits of the loose rubble gave way beneath my feet. No matter that it was cold, I was sweating by the time I came to a long, flat stretch, almost like a porch laid along the side of the mesa. There were trees, piñons, and juniper, I thought from the smell, tucked in at its edge against the cliff. I knew I'd never find a better place to rest. My legs were shaking with fatigue, and the rest of me wasn't much better. The night was never still. Anybody who thought of this deserted country, looking at it on a map, just hadn't been here at night. It was alive with creatures. I leaned against the rough bark of a scrubby juniper and listened. Even wild things were company when you were alone. I rubbed my eyes. My fingers were gritty and it made them sting. It seemed strange that I hadn't spoken to anybody, any human being, since the last farewell to Dad. And Dad had been dead then, and I wondered if that counted. I shook my head. My wits were getting fuzzy. I struggled to my feet after a while and decided I'd better move while I could. I had no idea of how far I'd come or how far I'd still had to go, but I knew I'd better keep moving. To stay still for too long was to die. I knew that without any doubt. "I'm no Apache!" I protested aloud. All the small sounds hushed at once. I sighed and took up my long trek again. This time my eyes kept turning toward the moon so persistently that I gave up trying to keep them from it. My feet were feeling their way along, but my mind floated above, far above. I was filled with reddish moonlight. Though the moon was now overhead and didn't stare into my eyes. Something hauled me to a stop. 1 foot still, raised to step. My head was spinning and I was shaking again, all over this time. I took out my bottle of water for a sip and my hand froze where it was. The cougar was standing on the pathway facing me. The track was so uneven up and down that I was a bit lower than he was, though he was farther on. Looking up, I could see the big cat against the moon. It was outlined in a nimbus of cold fire, and from the dark face glowed 2 eyes like coals. I waited to become terrified. I should have, but instead there came a sense of companionship. Not the chummy kind, far from it. Instead, an appraising sort of feeling that grew stronger as the cat looked me over. Then it raised its head and squalled. I didn't know how long I stood there in the path. The cougar went away and I didn't move. When I really came to, the moon was past being overhead. Its light shone directly into the path now, and I could see, just where the cat had stood, a gaping gully, cut sharply at an angle across the track. If I had walked on blindly, I'd have gone right into it. The moonlight was bright, and I knelt to look for any trace of the big cat. There wasn't a paw print to be seen. There was no wild smell in the night air. Had it been real, that panther? Or had my own mind warned me? Was I hallucinating then? Or now? I stared down into those black depths, pitched a pebble into the darkness. After a long time, a tiny clatter came back to my ears. It was real. This was 3 times. First, I'd seen the print of that big paw in the sand of the stream bed. I'd heard the cries and seen the tawny shape for an instant after I'd reached the top of the chimney. Now this. Something came to me. Charlie had longed for a strong sign of his own medicine journey, a totem of great power. What could be stronger than a cougar? Was this my totemic beast? "You're getting lightheaded," I told myself. "It's safer not to keep going, if you're going to get all nutty and all." I stopped where I was and propped myself against a boulder. cold as I soon was, I slept until daylight woke me. I hope you enjoyed chapter 8. Tomorrow we will go to chapter 9.